I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James Whitefield, yes, Mina Kimes.
All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick here. Taylor Kyle's there for CLNS Media, back with another episode of the Patriots Daily Podcast, powered by Prize Picks, powered by Game Time, powered by a ring light on my end, and powered by a new setup on Taylor's end with a new microphone, a new camera, and we are ready to rock to take on the Patriots' final week of the 2024 season. Patriots lose 40-7, as you guys know. We're going to go through the what we can from the game. It's hard to break down. Taylor, we mentioned that, it was tough to kind of go through this whole thing because not a lot of good was taken out of it. Mayo mentioned that after the game. He mentioned that this morning as well. But we're going to break it down in a couple parts, a couple highs and lows on the defense, a couple highs and lows on the offense, and then we will wrap up the episode with a brief Q&A, state of the team, to see exactly where this Patriots team is at and answer any questions you guys may have. But before we get into all of the some of the film, some of the things that went wrong in this one, a couple news and notes that we wanted to tackle before we get started. We kind of already hit on the number one overall pick that the Patriots now currently have heading into this week. If you missed that, check it out. We have a video up on the channel. It was our most recent Patriots Daily Podcast episode from this morning. But a couple more things trickled in. And first and foremost, I want to hit on the Mike Vrabel situation, Taylor, because it was reported first from Adam Schefter that his contract with the Cleveland Browns is now complete. He is free to move around, free to interview anywhere, which means he can basically interview with the Saints, the Saints, the Bears, the Jets, any team that has a head coaching vacancy. He is now free to interview. And Diana Rossini from The Athletic mentioned in a column this morning that another potential landing spot for Vrabel could be the New England Patriots if they decide to move on from Mayo. Vrabel is expected to prioritize openings with a positive ownership situation and teams with either a quality quarterback in place or a path to getting one. Now, people will argue that the Patriots ownership situation is not a positive one. However, we do know that Mike Vrabel does have a quality relationship with the Crafts, as we saw last season. He was inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame. So with all that being said, and obviously they have the quality QB situation as well with Drake Maye. So with that being said, what do you make of the report? I know you kind of gave your spiel on should they get Vrabel, should they not get Vrabel, but latest on the report, the fact that Rossini was also one of the people a couple weeks ago, Taylor, that mentioned Mayo being safe. I think this is now noteworthy that she uses that information, but then also puts Vrabel out as a potential candidate for the job.
Yeah, I think we talked about this after the game, that I still don't love the idea of just automatically going to Mike Vrabel because it feels like you're making the same mistake twice in a row. Now, of course, Vrabel has a track record. He also likely has connections in the league, unlike Mayo, where he can actually bring people in on his own. Also might work well with Elliott Wolf because they both obviously spent some time in Cleveland with the Browns. They've had a pretty consistent overall system over there. So maybe there's some carryover where Elliott Wolf doesn't necessarily have to get the can and they can find some way to build a team that they both see fit. Especially because I feel like Vrabel has a lot of the same values as Mayo in terms of the way they wanted to construct their roster. And another area where I had pause with Vrabel is that there are just so few defensive coaches in the NFL right now who have had consistent success. Like, all right, I'm going to look it up right now. Look at all the NFL teams. Like, obviously, you've got Mike Tomlin, more of a CEO type anyway, but still a guy whose roots are in defense. But he is literally the exception. Also hasn't had a lot of playoff success, which also I guess you could tie to him not having a quarterback in quite some time. Then you look through the rest of the league, like Todd Bowles. Yeah, it's had a decent amount of success, I will say, but also he's had some really good offensive coordinators.
Totally.
And that kind of brings it around to, okay, if you do hire Vrabel, what's going to happen with the offense? If he has McDaniels, at least it gives you a head coach of the offense. Another guy, like you said, who's probably not going to leave as well. So you have two guys on both sides of the ball who can completely run the show, have experience, and really do know what they're doing. Hopefully, Vrabel would also be able to bring in a defensive coordinator because I think he's also more of a CEO type, but he's very hands-on as well. But the thing with McDaniels with me is that he never really ran the West Coast system extensively. The Earnhardt Perkins offense was a little bit of everything, but they didn't lean into it in the way where I feel like you need to really allow Drake Maye to thrive, especially with like RPOs and stuff like that. We saw some of it with Cam, and we did see McDaniels adapt the system and also obviously work with young quarterbacks and develop them. So if there had to be an abrupt change, I feel like that is one of the better systems because we have an idea of what it might look like. But at the same time, I'm hesitant that maybe McDaniels puts Maye in a system that doesn't fully capitalize on his skill set. So, we'll see with all that. But obviously, Vrabel is one of the guys you'd like towards the top of the list. But I'd also like for them to keep it open and still bring in other people. And I don't think that Vrabel would get scared off if you did that. I feel like everywhere else that he might be thinking about would ideally do the same thing. So I'm open
100%.
to Vrabel. I'm open to the pairing of him and McDaniels to a degree, but I'd like to know that they've evolved their approach as well, schematically, maybe philosophically, depending on, where they stand right now. And also don't close things off and still entertain the idea of other candidates.
For sure. And I think the good news with that is, first and foremost, with the transition to Gerard Mayo, the reason that happened was because they had the clause in his contract, right? So they were able to bypass the Rooney Rule. They were able to bypass all other interview options, where even if they do have their sights set on Mike Vrabel, they do ideally need to at least bring in other candidates in. And that's something where I heard a story about this a few weeks ago with when Bill Cowher left the Steelers, right? And they had a couple, Ken Wisenhunt was one of their assistants on the staff, and then another defensive guy, I forget who it was, but so many people in and around the Steelers thought they were just going to transition from Cowher to one of the guys in-house, but they opened up the search, and they heard from Mike Tomlin, and he basically wooed them enough where he ended up coming in, and he's had obviously the success that we've seen now. So I think given the fact that they will have to open it up, because I mean, nobody else on the Patriots staff right now has in their contract. At least I don't think. The Mayo one came up kind of abruptly last year. Yeah, Mike Pellegrino all of a sudden has a clause in his contract that he's the next man up. But no, so I think they have to open it up, right? And ideally at that point, the Crafts see that. They know they made this mistake this time where they weren't open-minded about it, and at least maybe listen to people other than Mike Vrabel to try and get this thing done and point this thing in the right direction. As far as McDaniels goes, I think that's the key, or one of the keys in this, is if you do take on Mike Vrabel, you need that offensive head coach in Josh McDaniels, who, we've hit this a bunch of times here now since the rumors came about, but he likely, very likely, unless another team gets stupid, won't get another head coaching job in this league, because he burned the Broncos, he burned the Colts for not even going there, and then he burned bridges, or he burned himself in Las Vegas with the Raiders. So ideally, he's not going anywhere. You keep him here, you pay him a lot of money, he develops the quarterback, and he's here for the next 10 plus years as the offensive coordinator. Give him an assistant head coach title where he still answers to Vrabel. He can still be the leader he is on the offense, but he's kind of kept in his place as he was here for so many years under Bill Belichick. So we'll see what happens, but definitely interesting that Diana Rossini threw that note in there today. All right, the other thing that we wanted to hit on before getting into the recap is Gerard Mayo's comments from this morning, both on the Greg Hill Show and with us, the assembled New England media. And he answered a lot of questions this morning, Taylor, about kind of like the future and his coaching philosophy and where he, not really philosophy, but where he is right now and essentially what he's done well. And it was a very pointed but great question from Mike Reese, basically right off the top. And he asked, what impactful things has he accomplished as a first-year head coach? And the answer was, and I'll read it verbatim and I'll tell you what I think it means. Just being able to weather the storm, Mayo said. It seems like we've been in the storm for a long time. I think the players as a whole, I would say they've come in to work every day during a difficult season. That's been a huge piece of the puzzle. Hopefully we keep that up going forward. We've had 8 one-score games this year. Honestly, we have to win those games. That's what the NFL is. That's going to be the goal moving forward. So he still hasn't really answered what he does well. And I don't mean to laugh, but it's like he was asked, what do you do well? And he says, well, it's been a shit show, but I calmed things down. It's like, but that's still not a tangible head coaching item to me. So he also said what he would have done differently to produce more wins, and he said I'm on the same page. I'm still going strong. For the confidence is still high for himself. He said, we're on a journey. You're going to have to go through the fire, go through the booze, go through the criticism. Anything worth having has to be hard, and that's what it is right now. So thoughts on Mayo's comments this morning and kind of what position he put himself in today heading into Sunday against the Bills.
They were just empty calories. And to a degree, we get on him when he isn't Belichickian and says too much, and now I know he's trying to be more tight-lipped, and that's what we're getting. So it's a lot of word salad. It's a lot of just repeating the same mantras over and over again, which is what we used to get from Bill. But at the same time, like, my dude, you have not proven to do anything well on a consistent basis. You say you weathered the storm. not really weathering it all that well because things are getting worse. You have players that are starting to speak out more and more.
Yep.
Getting visibly frustrated on the field. We pointed out one play, the very first offensive snap of the game, where Kendrick Bourne lines up in the wrong spot. Hunter Henry has to move him, and Henry is visibly angry, and Kendrick Bourne is just confused. I saw Kendrick Bourne throwing his hands up at times. Hunter Henry, but there was a visible frustration on the offense. Defensively, I'll say I didn't see the lack of effort necessarily that Daniel Ekuale did. I didn't think that anybody necessarily stopped trying, especially in the run defense. I just think there's places where talent is still an issue. You've got guys who just aren't really playing to their assignments, like Sione Takitaki. You got young guys who are just slow to process at times. It's just a lot of upgrades that need to be made roster-wise, but it still doesn't feel like they're ahead of the curve ever. It always feels like they're reacting rather than dictating terms. And that's the biggest thing for me that disappoints me is, well, even the veterans are getting cooked every once in a while, and it feels like they're not playing fast sometimes, which they did, obviously. Yes, it's Bill Belichick, but still, you wanted to see some level of continuity, and it just feels like everything has taken a step back. So I didn't like the response because I'd like for him to give us a little something more. Because like you say, oh, everybody comes to work every day. I know this is kind of maybe unfair, but it's not true because Chooks quit on the team.
Right.
So it's not even 100%.
No, it's true. You're right.
And then he even admitted where he said, yeah, everybody's still trying hard. And then goes on the radio and says that people weren't putting their hands up on the field goal block unit, which was true. They looked like they didn't care. It was like some good reps from Dietrich Wise where he was trying hard. Brendan Schooler's firing off the edge. Like there's a few guys on those that are trying. For the most part, guys are standing straight up, not really trying to do anything. Not on extra points, on field goal blocks. So for 3 points, extra points, sometimes, I kind of get the mentality. These are almost never blocked because kickers don't put them low enough.
Sure.
But that's even the kind of thing where like a team like the Chiefs, where every little detail matters and you have to be locked in.
Dynasty Patriots.
Exactly. And I understand it's a blowout, but again, that's the time where you need to show out and say, hey, I want to be part of this team or I want to put good film on for my next team. Let me show out. And you weren't really seeing that. Now, again, the run defense, I didn't think it was as embarrassing as it was against Arizona, but still the Chargers were able to run it well. We'll talk about that more later. So yeah, I just didn't. I'm sick of these comments, man, because I would like for him to defend himself and give us a little more behind the curtain of what he is doing well, because we can't see it. They're getting worse. He keeps talking about these one-score games. Dude, 6 of them haven't been by one score in the losses, I'm pretty sure, and 3 of your past 5 games have been blowout losses. So what are you talking about? This was the time you're supposed to get better, and you're playing some of your worst ball. So, yeah, man, I understand there's personnel deficiencies. I understand, maybe DeMarcus Covington isn't doing his job as well as he should have. I get those things. But the team just doesn't feel like they're consistently prepared and ready to play. And obviously there's some lack of resilience because they're young and inexperienced, like John Jones has mentioned. But also, again, you've got guys that are beginning to speak out, and it just feels like all of the messages that you had before the season and even during the season are not being met.
I just, the quotes on the effort, that's the one that's really kind of rubbing me the wrong way here. On one hand, I get that, well, you know what? And the fact that he doesn't just say, look, I was a defensive coach and I think I bring a value on the defensive side of the football. Like, you should at least be able to say that. And him not saying that tells me he doesn't really believe that. Unless, and now granted, he wasn't asked pointed the question we've asked on this podcast for the last couple weeks, which is, what does Gerard Mayo do well? He was asked what he's done well this year. So I guess that's a little different. So I'll give him a pass there. But as far as the effort, I kind of want to read it out loud because I have him in front of me. He was asked about Ekuale's quote to Andrew Callahan about how he saw guys that weren't giving their all. And he said, we saw guys still flying around. Guys were still flying around, giving good effort. It was more about execution as a whole. I didn't see that. And then you mention it. 20 minutes later, he goes on Greg Hill and said the effort wasn't the problem. It was execution. But then he says there were a couple field goals that guys didn't get their hands up. And you mentioned, I'm kind of regurgitating what you just said, but it is such a small detail. But this is a detail-oriented game. We know that. It's football. Everything matters. All 11 guys, all on the same page. It's super cliche, but it's the truth, and that's what the best teams do. Down 40-7, guys can go out there and still, Brendan Schooler could go out and block a field goal and turn it into a 40-14 game, and nobody cares about the score at the end of the day. But when somebody pulls up a Brendan Schooler teach tape and says this is what this guy did and this is what he did in a 40-7 game, that makes Brendan Schooler look better. So it's almost like an attitude thing with the players as well, and that comes from the top down with the coaching. So I didn't love it either. It continues to feel like a mess. It went from after the Arizona game, we were sitting here kind of questioning whether he should deserve his job still. Then they played better in Buffalo. And now I feel like we're back right where we were after the Arizona game. So, again, we'll see what happens. One more game to play. Do you have anything more to add before we get into the defense?
Just one more thing I cannot emphasize enough, because it's not even so much that the team is losing. It's not just that. Even when you look at Dan Campbell, I think they had more blowout losses than the Patriots did, and they had one towards the end of the year. They did start getting better. That's where their wins came, whereas the Patriots came like early on and then in the middle, and then they pretty much dried up after Chicago, obviously.
Right.
But if they were just losing, because we've talked about this, defensively, I think injuries have really kneecapped them, because Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers,
For sure.
Ron Bentley, Christian Barmore. These are four of your most impactful players, and all of them either have missed significant time or were on the field and they weren't healthy enough to be themselves. I'm empathetic towards that, because you've had so many guys trying to fill these holes and so many young players, and it hasn't worked out. Offensively, I think the issue is a lack of maturity and a lack of experience. You got Kendrick Bourne. We all love him as a human being, but my God, every single week he makes at least one glaring mistake, and it looks like it's starting to get to the point where other veterans are getting frustrated, because it's not normal for Hunter Henry to get frustrated really publicly or visibly at all, much less on the very first offensive half of the game. So I think he just lacks the maturity it takes to truly be the leader of a room. And then you got Kayshon Boutte, Demario Douglas, Javon Baker, Jalen Polk, who frankly, I'm starting to think just in terms of picking up, verbiage and offenses, I think maybe in terms of how they play the game, like late hands, certain adjustments, I think their football IQ is decent in that regard. But I think when it comes to sometimes finding spaces in zones, when it comes to like that professional element to the game, they're all very much lacking. They're very much works in progress, because they've only been in the league for 1 to 2 years. So I say all that to say I get that they need more talent. Like if you add T. Higgins, Darius Slayton, 1 or 2 quality veteran offensive linemen, and you reinforce the defensive trenches, I think this team looks a lot different, right?
Totally.
My issue is, one, I would maybe be able to stomach the fact that I didn't really see what Mayo did well if he were to hire more help on defense, right? Just be the CEO, let the players lead everything, and you just basically get out of the way.
Sure.
Again, it's the messaging every time, and that's the part where like I'm freaking laying up at night thinking, who is really going to want to sign when they're sitting across from Gerard Mayo after what he's done this season? After every single time, it seems like, well, not every time, but at least once or twice a week, he ends up saying something that goes out there and makes it look like the Patriots are just a ridiculously led team.
A funny thing,
that's the nail in the coffin for me. It's like it's hard to excuse everything when you are making this organization look bad on a regular basis in your first season and not contributing anything positive that's tangible.
When he was talking with Mego and Wiggy this morning on EEI, they asked him about Keon White and his question, or him speaking out in the conversations they've had. And Mayo basically said, yeah, once you say something out in the open, you can't take it back. And I'm like, dude, you've done that all season long. Every single time you say something, so you know that the things you're saying can't be taken back, but you're still trying to hopelessly take them back, knowing full well that we're going to take them, regurgitate them, and try and make something out of nothing. And sometimes it is something out of nothing, but when it happens this often, it's not. There's clearly a messaging issue with this team from the top down. And if anything, that's the one thing that's going to have to change heading into next year.
And he still very rarely gets through an entire thought without stopping, having someone start their next question, and then having to go back and further correct himself. It just feels like he's so in over his head. Mm-hmm. And it's one thing when it was happening earlier on, even mid-season, I really tried to give him till the bye, which may have been unfair in retrospect, maybe, but still I wanted at some point for him to not seem like these press conferences were just such mountains that he had to climb. And literally this morning, you have three or four times where he had to go back and make sure he elaborated on what he thought because he didn't get it out right the first time. Just like it just feels so unserious. Where if you get Vrabel in here, he's not going to be talking back and apologizing for what he says. He's going to say what he means, and he's very rarely ever going to have to walk it back. So, it just I feel it's so hard to envision another year of this, even if the roster is better. Because if they win games, obviously that fixes everything. But I don't know if the defense is going to be good enough for them to actually be that 10-win team, 9-10-win team that they really need to be if they do make the key additions that they need to.
Right. I mean, you look at all the examples, the burn some cash, right? We're going to have more than 4 wins. We're going to be playing our best football in December, and we're going to be the team that, you don't want to play. And, I get those are the messages you have to send, but he hasn't really hit on any of them. Some of them he's had to walk back. So it doesn't look good right now. And the reason I mentioned we're going to be playing our best football in December is that's something that he was trying to hang his hat on back in September when he was asked about it. What are your goals? How do you envision this team who we all knew it wasn't a great situation? What's kind of going to be your stamp on this team? And we're going to be playing our best in December, and clearly they're not doing that right now. So let's get into it. Let's get into the actual football that they aren't playing well in December. And this defense, we're going to get right into the defense. They let up 40 points. We saw struggles all across the board, but more specifically with some veteran defensive backs, and most notably Jonathan Jones, who was oftentimes lined up on Ladd McConkey, who for the day went for 8 catches, 94 yards, and 2 touchdowns. John Jones was asked about McConkey's game and the game plan after the game, said they did a good job of game planning, if I'm going to be honest with you. They still a lot of picks, a lot of early man coverage. And even when we were able to get into zone to try and pass off some picks, they were able to kind of check the ball down, be in manageable 3rd, 4th down situations, and get us in zone coverage. They had a really good game plan. The red area played a Ladd. He circles in to go across her, then circles back. There was a one-hitter for them. That didn't hit on that. They get in the right coverage, right calls. They were able to have some success. So, Taylor, what did you see from John Jones? What did you see from Kyle Duggar, who originally thought didn't have a great game? You said after you looked at the film, looks a little better from number 23. What did you see from those guys in the back end, and why did they struggle so much against this Chargers passing offense?
Yeah, so I'll first start off with Kyle Duggar really quickly, because I gave him a lot of crap during the game. I actually thought it was his best game in a while. When you factor in the fact his change of direction, his mobility are really hindered by the ankle injury, and you can see it. I don't like that he's out on the field. I hope that was his last game. They just shut him down and play the young guys against backups. But all things considered, you have to give him some credit for, one, staying out there while injured, and also having the mental toughness to stay on the field when he's made so many mistakes and not just kind of giving up. I really did want to give him his flowers, because even the touchdowns allowed, one of them, Alex Austin said that he passed it off to Duggar too quickly. They were basically trying to exchange responsibilities, where Austin had somebody in the slot. Then he was supposed to go to the deep middle with Kyle Duggar taking over. But obviously he doesn't have the same explosiveness. That's a really tough cover when it changes that fast. So I give him some peace there. Also, Ladd McConkey's touchdown where he faked going across and then came back. That's a really good design. You don't see very often.
And that was a sick route too.
Right. Like you'll see the 2 crossing routes that are meant to beat man. It was zone, and it was a really good job by McConkey redirecting quickly and sitting. Duggar kind of overreacted to it, but again, it's one of those where as soon as he made a bad move, he was kind of screwed. It's a tough position to be in against such a safety receiver. I want to give him some grace for that. Also, because he had 3 run stops, led the team. He was physical in the ground game. He laid some big hits. I thought the effort was there from him. Couple missed tackles, but again, tough for him to change direction. So, Kyle Duggar, I respect what you did on the field, man. I'm so sorry. I'm not sorry I've been giving you crap, because, you haven't been playing super well, but it was really awesome to see him have a better game. Especially considering we talk about like next offseason. Well, can you rely on these guys being healthy? Is Duggar actually washed? Is it just the injury? Hopefully this was a encouraging sign that once he does get healthy, he can be better. John Jones, different story. He was just about as bad as I thought he was live. Now, I will say he had some competitive reps, but first I'll go to the stats and then I'll throw up the tape. So Jonathan Jones targeted 10 times, allowed 91 yards and a touchdown. That was for 137.9 passer rating, and he allowed 4 total conversions, one of those including that touchdown that I mentioned. So let's get this. How can I get this full screen? I want to get us out of here. So our faces.
I don't know if there's. Hold on. Here we go.
This is it.
Oh, we both clicked it. There perfect. You go.
All right, yeah. So I will say that Jones was more competitive against Ladd than I thought he was upon initially watching, because he did have some smothering coverage reps. Like there was an inverted cross he was all over. There was a crossing route on 4th and 3, smothered McConkey. And also there was one pick play. They tried to get McConkey open on a fade. John Jones, after getting beat by it earlier, did a much better job staying on top of it. He also had a tackle short of the sticks on another pick play against McConkey. That was on 3rd and 8, although the Chargers would go on and attempt it on 4th down and make it. Also had a couple nice block sheds and tackles. But the rest of it was not great. And this was really the first time that Jonathan Jones has really shown his age, I think, on tape. Now, he likened this plan and this offense for the Chargers to the Rams because they use a lot of motion, they use a lot of picks, they make it difficult for you to cover these guys. But he still just didn't look as explosive as he needed to be to cover McConkey on some of these reps. You had the deep touchdown where it felt like John Jones just took too long getting on his horse. that one right there. You had the Josh Palmer crossing route where he got smoked. Josh Palmer also beat him on a deep pattern. I think McConkey beat him on a deep pattern as well, and he was giving up a lot of space, especially downfield. Now, he got lucky. Justin Herbert had a couple errant throws. There were also a couple of times that Herbert just didn't see him. But I was pretty discouraged by how much separation John Jones was allowing. Also missed a couple of tackles in coverage. One of them actually allowed a third down conversion where he tried to gather himself, which I respect, but by stopping his feet, he kind of gave the receiver an opportunity to kind of power through and end up getting the first down. He also got blocked out of a play by McConkey on a pretty physical rep, and it was kind of embarrassing. And as I told you, McConkey kind of got in his feels, or John Jones kind of got in his feels at one point. I'm sure you probably saw the video on Twitter where he kind of gives him an arm and kind of starts jawing with him, and McConkey just laughs at him. I think it was because there was a play where it looked like John Jones kind of slipped and was almost rolled his leg. It was really scary. And the camera panned away just as McConkey kind of engaged him. I wasn't sure if he pushed him forward and made it worse or tried to keep him up. But John Jones seemed to take offense to something during the game. So there was that play. There was also one later where they got further downfield. And then he, as soon as he could, he was blocking McConkey, knocked him down and kind of got in his face. I was like, I've never seen John Jones do this kind of thing. So I feel like McConkey kind of take him to the woodshed, not always in way to shut up on the stat sheet, but it felt like he was getting a little mad. So I think John Jones is like an automatic re-signing to an affordable deal because I don't think anybody else is going to want to re-sign him if he does want to play. But I also don't think you can just say, all right, corner set, because Marcus Jones is an injury risk. Alex Austin's been solid, but he's still unproven. So I feel like if you can get a DJ Reed or say a Paulson Adebo from the Saints, who I really like, although he's hurt, use John Jones as a rotational player, maybe have him at safety or something because he is a veteran who obviously is a legend for the Patriots in his own right. But this game showed me that, I don't think you can really rely on him to be a slot because Belichick has said if you can't cover a crossing route from the slot consistently, you can't really be a star in the NFL or a star as in a slot corner. And you saw Josh Palmer blew past him, and that's pretty discouraging. So maybe he should be more of an outside corner, but I don't think he can be a full-time cornerback going into next season. You
know me, I love the drama involved in football, so I do think the pushing and shoving and John Jones getting pissed off is hilarious. And I think it's so funny because it's one of those things where, the veteran DB versus the rookie wide receiver, he's going to give him shit, and he's going to give him a shove, and he's going to be like, it's not your time yet, it's not your game. The part that I think is so funny about this is McConkey actually had a leg to stand on here because he torched him all day. So whether he was talking some garbage, whether it was just because of, the thing you mentioned, or it's just that he was playing a professional game and John Jones was trying to give him some, it's not your time yet, rookie, when clearly it was. I just think that whole back and forth was pretty hilarious. And I am with you. I think that Jones doesn't necessarily have to be a priority re-signing, and he certainly doesn't mean the cornerback room is set for next season. Someone who, you may want to bring back, but he is getting up there in age. He was asked at his, it's so funny. We talk about the curse that's on the media award, the Ron Hobson Media Guy Award, the good guy. The second John Jones wins that award, he gets torched by Ladd McConkey. So there is a little bit of bad luck there. Matthew Judon not here. Matthew Slater retired. David Andrews hurt. So, a lot of those guys, it doesn't go well for them. But good dude, was a good guy with us this year, just kind of struggling here down the stretch. We'll see if the Patriots brace on him. Also, John Jones uncharacteristically calling out coaches. Yes, that's something that was really surprising. He mentioned that he didn't think that he did say two very telling comments that he doesn't usually make. One, he said that they're a team where when they basically get challenged, they don't know how to push back. Yeah, which has been very obvious. There's been times where they kind of limp back, but for the past couple seasons, outside of their defense, this has been a team that just is not very resilient, at least not on a consistent basis. Also said that he kind of called out the coaching. I forget what the exact quote was, but said that some coaches weren't doing enough. I highly doubt that's Mike Pellegrino. Highly doubt that's Brian Belichick. I don't see Jonathan Jones calling out a position coach on another unit, especially considering how many losses the trenches have had. So who do you think he's talking about? It seems like he's defended Mayo in the past. I think he says they've been prepared and everything. Yeah. It makes me think of Covington because, as we've said, there's not many times that players have gone out of their way to defend Covington. They're not always asked specifically about him. But I remember how vehemently they defended Bill and even how they defended Mayo
I haven't seen that same energy for DeMarcus Covington. So just to put a bow on this John Jones segment, that was, a not so great ending to what was not a great performance overall, but also.
But it's a telling answer is what it is. Exactly. Here's the quote. He says, "I think they've done a good job this whole season," talking about the coaches, "but I think as players, we've come up short. Some coaches have come up short, if I'm being honest with you all. So we all take accountability on the season we put out there." So definitely, little cracks in the armor there for, or a chink in the armor, whatever you want to call it, for John Jones, who was the media good guy all year long, kind of throwing a little shade to the coaching. But again, we'll see what happens there. All right, let's move on to another part of this defensive side of the football for the Patriots in this 40-point allowed performance. It's the trenches. They once again struggled, not only in the run game, but also in the pass game. They allowed running backs 37 carries for 147 yards, which averaged out to 4 yards per carry, which a little bit better than what we've seen, but 4 yards per carry is still well ahead of schedule for running backs. And then the pass rush was non-existent. No sacks on Justin Herbert, only 4 quarterback hits, and he basically sat back there all day and was able to pick them apart. Did you see that clip from the Pop-Tarts Bowl of Cam Ward? There was a clip where he had so much time that he's sitting there and he's kind of doing it. He's jumping a little bit.
Stopped his feet.
Yeah, and he realized, oh, they're not coming after me. I can just sit here and look, and he chucked one out to the running back like so nonchalantly. That's kind of what Justin Herbert looked like against this Patriots pass rush. So what did you see from the Patriots trenches up front, and what do they need to do better, not only heading into Week 18, but for the rest of or heading into 2025?
Yeah, look, we know this is a talent-deficient team, especially in the trenches. As I said during the game, as I've kind of been pushing, this defense has some issues. A lot of them are injury-related again. But I think if they get reinforcements in the trenches, get better depth there, I think that this defense would look significantly better. Like you said, the pass rush was terrible. They got pressure on Justin Herbert on 18.6%, or at least the pressure rate was 18.6%. That was their lowest this entire season. Now, could have predicted that. This is one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, but it really exposed how bad they are at being able to generate any kind of pressure. Now, I will give Anthony Jennings some credit. He had 4 pressures. He had a hit, 2 unblocked pressures, and then a cleanup. He forced a quick throw, forced a bad throw on a twist, and he helped rush the quarterback on a stunt. And then there were a couple other guys that had a couple of pressures. But the run defense also, they allowed about a 52% success rate. That was, let me look at my stats. That was the 5th time this season they've allowed a 50% success rate at least against opposing rushes. That is not good. It's very much not ideal. And yes, they only allowed 4 yards per carry. Devon Godshaw sounded like he was happy with the effort, but against a team like the Chargers, we talked about it, they'll take 4 yards a carry. And the Patriots faced some of the most runs in a single game they've seen this entire season. So looking specifically at what went wrong up front, because yes, there's talent deficiencies, like Eric Johnson is not going to really blow the doors off. Jeremiah Farms is inconsistent. There are also veterans that were not really doing their job well, and that's what mostly stood out for me. So yeah, when you look at the run defense, Sione Takitaki was one of the biggest issues that I saw. The guy consistently seemed like he was completely flying out of his gaps. No discipline, no patience, just basically flying wherever he thought the run was going and opening up these massive cutbacks. Now, there were plenty of times where the defensive line could have done more to create less of a huge running lane, but I know Takitaki missed a lot of time. The entire summer, was late coming back. But for a veteran, it just is odd to see him out of position this often. Dante Hightower is also taking responsibility. Hey, he said he got off to a slow start as a rookie coach, but this room is kind of scaring me. Devon Godshaw, he was solid overall. He was really good one-on-one, but I did see him getting moved by double teams. That's happened a bit too consistently for my taste. At the same time, the guy's going to be 30 next season. Teams have been able to run on the Patriots at will. Hasn't given them a whole lot of opportunities to get off the field, and he's playing a lot. So I don't want to give him all the flack, especially since he had 2 run stops in the 4th quarter, showed that he was not quitting on his team. Then some other deficiencies like Marte Mapu misses a tackle in the hole, leads to a big gain. Another play where Marte Mapu's really slow to diagnose, gives him a pretty bad shot at trying to blow up this run. Keon White, he got kind of blown up a couple of times in pretty bad fashion.
Oof.
And then there was a touchdown run where I'll actually go back to it really quick because I did not understand what the decision-making was, because you have Jelani Tavai over the center when the Chargers only need a couple of yards to score.
Yeah, what?
And for some, you'd want a big body there so that the linebackers can shoot into the backfield. Instead, Jelani Tabai ends up having to take the center one-on-one, doesn't have any real chance of winning this. It looks like Christian Ellis ends up in the wrong gap as well, which doesn't help. Kyle Duggar tries to make the tackle, but it's not in the right gap, so he slips off. Marte Mapu can't get downhill fast enough to make a play on the ball.
You're not giving yourself any chance there up the middle whatsoever.
Exactly. So I thought that was a really rough decision. And then, like I said, the pass rush was just completely non-existent throughout this game. Justin Herbert had all time to throw, especially on true dropbacks. It's not even just the times where Herbert threw screens, got the ball out of his hand, had the A to play action. You're talking about him just chilling in the pocket consistently throughout the game, at least before he was able to get the ball out. Sometimes he didn't capitalize, but for the most part, he was able to find some downfield completions. Now, you don't have Christian Barmore. You don't have Matt Judon. Yannick Ngakoue has not been the infusion of juice that you expected. And honestly, the line games and blitzes just were not effective. There were times guys were running into each other. They just weren't really getting home on them. So that's one thing that I remember the coaching staff said was going to be the way that they generated pressure, right? They wanted to generate it by getting all these line games because in years past when they were winning Super Bowls, another, in hindsight, really bad comment from Gerard Mayo. Yep. He brought up the Super Bowls and said, hey, we used to generate pressure when we didn't have an elite rusher. Well, now they're not being coached well enough to have those executed well on a consistent basis. Again, part of that is definitely talent, but part of it, I think, is also just coaching and scheme. I really like Jerry Montgomery, but I want to ask him, I don't know if we're actually going to speak to defensive coaches, but I want to know what the disconnect is and why they haven't had success on these line games, because at best they just don't work, and at worst you have guys running into each other. So they can't generate pass rush. That's one thing they did really well last year, despite having so little pass rush talent outside of Christian Barmore. So the lack of talent's obviously a problem, but like even on stunts where you see all throughout the NFL, these pick stunts where one guy literally his only job is to blow up like a center or a guard, so it creates room for somebody else to get open behind him. We don't even really see them do that. It just feels like old school, just get in the way rather than trying to blow guys up. I don't think it should be a legal play because I don't even know how you're supposed to defend it. But while it's legal, you should try to use it. And we never see that from them. So pass rush can't scheme pressure. They can't get it when they just rush regularly. And the run defense doesn't have the horses or the discipline to consistently stop run teams, especially when they know that they're going to get run on. So really disappointing from the trenches. I think talent will go a long way, but I would also like to see some better leadership, at least for this group.
Well, that answers that. No pass rush and tough play from the defensive backfield, and that's how you let up 40 points to a team on the cusp of the playoffs. So before we get into the offensive side of the football, Taylor, we are going to talk about our friends over at Prize Picks, but before we do that, we do have some news from Bills head coach Sean McDermott, who gave some insight into what the Bills will do next Sunday against the Patriots as far as sitting guys, playing guys. They're obviously locked into the number 2 seed. McDermott spoke with the Buffalo media earlier, said that you will see some starters out there playing, and you'll see some other players who we want to take a good look at. It'll be a blend of both. He added that Josh Allen will be out there for a very, very short-lived amount of time, and then he'll be off rather quickly. He mentioned that Josh Allen has a starting streak that he wants to keep alive, so they're going to at least put him out there to start the football game, but it sounds like it'll mostly be Mitch Trubisky on Sunday for the Patriots. So, going to be easier, I would say, for them to beat a Mitch Trubisky than a Josh Allen, but yeah, you never know. You never know what happens. Trubisky has kind of shredded the Patriots in the past. Don't know if Joe Milton's going to be out there yet, as we mentioned. Gerard Mayo saying that Drake May could sit down. So we'll see what happens there. But that's just some quick breaking news. Josh Allen for some of the game, Mitch Trubisky for the rest.
Pats should do the same, by the way. Maybe a couple more series, but I really sincerely think, and watch our video where we talked about Patriots' first overall pick, what we think they should do and all that. But I think that Drake May should play a half, and then you let it be the Joe Milton show.
Yeah, yesterday I tweeted that I don't think they can sit May just because of the optics, and I've kind of changed gears a little bit on it just as far as the injury situation goes, because it does make you look bad and unprofessional if you don't play him because it looks like you're tanking. But you can still go out there and play hard, and you can use the Joe Milton, we want to see what we have in him excuse. I guess it's an excuse, but it's also kind of real because the game doesn't matter. The number 1 pick is on the line. And if Drake May goes out there, and I'm not going to say anything, but injures himself enough where it could impact next season, that makes it look even worse. So I'm kind of warming up to the idea if they do it. So we'll see what happens. We'll get into that more.
This is literally a preseason game.
Exactly.
You're going to get the starters, and then it's just going to be backups. Dude, let Drake May finish the season on a high note, get a couple good drives in. yank him, because if anything happens, if God forbid
Right.
he has to miss next season or something like that, like you said, that's going to really hurt your ability to sign these free agents if Mayo hasn't already hurt you enough.
The one correct thing Mayo said, not the one correct thing, I want to give him a little bit more credit than that, but talking about how it's a journey and it's not all about this game, he's 100% right there. And I know it might rub some football hardos and people the wrong way about, play your best players, and I get that. And that's kind of what I meant with the not sitting Drake Maye tweet. But again, the more I think about it, this game doesn't matter. You might as well see what you have in Joe Milton. But we'll get into that later on in the week.
Before last week or this weekend either. So it's a very different story than when you had 3. Now you have capital to get more. You're in a position to get more capital. Again, you don't need to tank, but you have every reason, like without tanking, just literally taking care of players, wanting to see young guys. And also because you do want to maintain this draft position, every reason to make sure that you basically, play the young guys, let them see what they have, and hopefully lose against Buffalo. That's all.
Exactly. All right, let's hear from our friends at Prize Picks, before we talk about the offensive side of the football in Saturday's contests against the Chargers. It is Prize Picks, and it is the best way to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all, and all you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. So run your game with us all season long on Prize Picks. It is playoff time, and it is now or never. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. We mentioned 1,000 times your cash right now on Prize Picks. They also put their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you get your money in as little as 15 minutes. They now have MasterCard as well as Venmo for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. As you see on screen here, they got Flex Fridays, they have Taco Tuesdays. Again, you just pick more or less. It's so easy, and we're going to continue to give out picks on the entirety of the NFL playoffs, so make sure you tune in here. So you think Lamar Jackson will get more than 250 passing yards this week? Will Mahomes throw for more than 1.5 touchdowns? Cook up those hot takes with us on Prize Picks. All you got to do is download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, we back. Let's talk about the offense. Offense only puts up 7 points. It was mostly bad on that side of the football. We're going to get into that in a second. Probably, as you pointed out, a regression, a step back from quarterback Drake Maye overall. But there was one good thing to take out of this, and that was that we saw Cole Strange play center for the first time in his entire NFL career. And for the most part, he looked pretty good. Drake Maye mentioned after the game, he said he thought he handled it well. There was a lot of pressure on him. First start, it's a different job than playing guard. And he said he was proud of the way he worked and proud of the way he fought. And he said he snapped the ball, and it's really a credit to him as far as, how that whole operation with him went. So I think that on top of Caden Wallace coming in the start of the fourth quarter and kind of playing some right tackle for you, looking pretty solid, was promising for the young offensive lineman. Now, it doesn't mean that it's a room that doesn't have to be addressed by any means this offseason. It is probably still priority number 1. But you have Layden Robinson coming on strong at the end of the season. Cole Strange could potentially be your center in waiting, and Caden Wallace at right tackle. So what did you see from Strange and Wallace specifically that gives you a little bit of hope heading into next season?
Yeah, I don't have any film on Layden that I pulled up, but I just want to say really quickly that he really does seem to be turning a corner. Now, there are mental mistakes. His hand punch, his hand fighting really does need some work as his strikes are kind of all over the place. And sometimes he'll overcommit on pass sets and leave himself open to getting beat on his edges. That was his profile coming out of college. But you see fewer quick, just really ugly losses from him, especially in pass protection relative to what you saw earlier this season. Again, still very much a work in progress. Right. Left guard is not fixed. Ideally, David Andrews comes back and maybe him and Cole Strange compete. I still want Trey Smith, but if you get a really good tackle in free agency, maybe you do bank on those guys so you're not just, throwing a ton of money maybe when you could allocate that in other places. So Layden Robinson kind of helping make this draft class look a little better. I know everyone fixates on Jalen Polk and the miss there. As of right now, he's a rookie. Let's give him at least another couple years. Javon Baker as well, those misses. But when you look at it, like Drake Maye, home run. Caden Wallace was injured. Jury's still out on him. Had some solid reps. Then Joe Milton has gotten universal praise for his work on the practice squad. Practice squad player of the week after every single win. Marcellus Dial, still learning, but he's been a starter on special teams, and Jaheim Bell has been in the lineup, and now Layden Robinson looking better. So, LA Wolves draft class, Ladd McConkey, yes, that looks like a really bad miss, but it's starting to look a little bit better than I think it did, especially when Layden Robinson was on the bench. But now I want to talk about Cole Strange because, one, Gerard Mayo said he graded out pretty well by their standards. Drake May, like you mentioned, gave him a lot of credit. The snapping, he looked like a natural. Also deserves credit for snapping the ball on the free play because that's an opportunity that Ben Brown has missed. I think there was 1 or 2 times that he hasn't the ball when that happened. Cole Strange, very alert, got it off, gave Drake May an opportunity to connect.
It's a really good point. I just said that, but I said it again because I didn't think of it at all until you just mentioned that because I guess I didn't put 2 and 2 together, but the free play was awesome. The fact that he was smart enough to do that, it's something so small, but in your first NFL start at center, that's huge, and obviously it turned into a touchdown, so good on him. Just wanted to say that, but continue.
That was really, and he deserves credit because it was an impressive.
Totally.
I think Drake May actually gave him his props for that one too. So where's the freaking media? They changed this thing. All right, full screen, because we're going to show the actual film of Cole Strange. A lot to like, I thought, from his tape. Now, PFF said he didn't allow any pressures. I disagreed. But first, I'm going to start with the things he did well. I really like the violence he brings. Now, if Layden, Cole, and Caden end up working out, you're going to have 3 guys who love to finish and are very nasty. All of those guys relish contact, love driving guys into the ground. You had Cole Strange looking for it, getting a violent slab on a defensive lineman, had a couple really strong finishes as well. Then in the run game, he had a really nicely executed combo and climb on a couple of reps. Nice finish on an outside zone rep where he really tried to lay some pain on his assignment. Got just enough on a combo on a pin and pull run, even though he didn't get any help late from Lester Cotton. That helped create a cutback lane for Antonio Gibson. Also helped create a cutback lane on outside zone around the third quarter. Now, there was a play where he got out leverage on outside zone, but he still helped sustain long enough to create some openings. Now, on the bad side, first, he got pushed into Drake May by a slanting defensive tackle on like a late quick throw. That wasn't the worst of it. And then he also kind of whiffed on a second level block on an RPO draw. Those are really the big issues in terms of like run blocking. But pass pro and mental mistakes, like those are the physical errors and things that I liked. Mentally, there were some errors. And you expect that from a guy who's playing center for the first time, hasn't played in a year. He had the early snap that led to Drake May getting sandwiched. He missed an interior blitzer. That led to an immediate unblocked pressure. Drake May ran for like a yard or 2. He also backed into Drake May on a throw that Drake May missed on a third down when he wasn't blocked. That's the kind of thing where Strange said, hey, I'm getting my spatial awareness down still. It really showed there, and especially sometimes when he is picking up blitzers. I don't think that's a long-term problem. Then as a run blocker, he was late to block a blitzer on outside zone. That led to a negative play. He came off one first-level block on another outside zone rep pretty quickly, kind of condensed the space on a solid game that probably could have gone for more for Ramondre Stevenson. Also thought he might have been too aggressive on a first-level block that led to an unblocked blitzer, ending up tackling Gibson much later on in the game. Then talking about Caden Wallace, not a ton from him. Didn't see a whole lot of significant reps. Did allow one pressure that was admittedly very ugly because he ended up getting bull rushed and kind of ended up tabletopping Drake May. But as a run blocker, he helped pancake a defender on a block with Jaheim Bell, then wound up suplexing somebody. It's actually in here somewhere. I'll find it again because it was one of the coolest reps I've seen from him since he got back. This is it right here. Pancakes the guy. Someone runs into him.
Let's go.
Suplex there. Also did a pretty good job sealing on a couple of reps. So I liked what I saw from Cole Strange. Mental mistakes that you pretty much expect, but there weren't a lot of physical errors from him. Overall, I really like the nastiness that he brought, the athleticism. You can see that he moves very well. Really smart player. Didn't really get fooled by line games. There might have been 1 or 2 that he missed, but for the most part, I think he looked good. Again, Caden Wallace, one glaring miss. Might have missed a second-level block as well. But he was solid. He was fine. Just really needs to work on how he plays against power. And then Layden Robinson having a good game. Honestly, even Vidarian Lowe and Demontre Jacobs. Jacobs had like 2 really bad losses. But considering they were going against Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, I actually thought they held up very well. For the most part, like the sacks, for example, Maye got sacked 4 times. Only one of those was credited to the offensive line. It should have been 2 because I don't think they counted Cole Strange's early snap. But still, for the most part, the pass protection really wasn't that bad. I think it was more on Drake May having a bit of a spotty game, which obviously we'll get into for the next segment.
Let's get into it in just a second. But I understand you, or as far as the offensive line goes, I think it's sort of what I said before, but promising to see, especially with David Andrews' status to be determined. I know there was some mistakes in Cole Strange's game, but those are all the kind of things you're going to expect in a guy's not only second game back from injury, but first game playing back from injury and first game playing at a center position. So overall, I mean, really impressive job, in my opinion, from Cole Strange in that position that he was in. And hopefully with David Andrews, I don't want to say he's not going to play next season because I think he's going to try his best, but with his age, he's kind of still up in the air. So I think it's important to have somebody who you can potentially fill in there. So good stuff from Cole Strange. All right, before we get into Drake Maye, Taylor, quick word from our friends over at Game Time, and then we'll wrap it up with Drake Maye, what he did. I guess really step back a little bit, but we'll talk Drake Maye, and then we'll answer some of your pressing questions before we get out of here. But like I said, first, quick word from friends over at Game Time.
It's the holiday season, and that means it is also the best time to watch and attend your favorite sports games, and you can do so right now with the Game Time app. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season, and that means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it's the perfect holiday gift. They also have their new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to live events even easier. It filters out the fluff and shows you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks, best feature. They also have all-in pricing. You toggle it on, and it shows you the exact price you're going to pay at checkout. No fees, no garbage, just the price right there on the app. They also have seat views. It gives you a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy your tickets, and they also have their lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets today with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it?
Game time.
Good work, Taylor. Good stuff. I'm glad you were ready for it. It is Game Time. It is the best app out there to get all of your tickets. And right now on the Game Time app, you can get into Patriots versus Bills for just $40. And I know it doesn't sound like fun because it's the last game and they're 3-13, but some fans had fun last weekend getting their chance in and, you know, all of that good stuff. It's still a great opportunity to get out there, tailgate, go see a game, and there's a number one pick in play here. So even go and root to lose. And if you do choose to do so, please go to Game Time. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, $40 is the low on the Patriots versus Bills game right now. All right, Taylor, let's wrap up with Drake Maye. So as we get into it, I will throw out there for the chat that we will answer some of your questions after this segment. So anything Patriots related, last game, this game, future, Mayo, Wolf, Maye, Travis Hunter, throw them in there. We don't have a ton of time, but we'll go rapid fire and get to as many as possible after we talk Drake Maye. So if you're here and have some questions, throw them in there and we will get to some after this. But Drake Maye takes a little bit of a step back in this Chargers game. Obviously, the offense only puts up 7 points. He doesn't throw an interception for the first time in 7 weeks, but he did still have a costly turnover that was credited to him on that pitch reverse type of play. Throws for just 117 yards and 1 touchdown. And a lot of miscommunication errors, and not just on him, but on the entire offense. We talked about the Kendrick Bourne thing. Obviously, some miscommunication, a miscue on that turnover. So just not a clean performance from the offense overall. So what'd you see from Maye? What'd you see from Maye's regression in his last game? And how can he improve on it? What'd you see overall from the kid?
Yeah, another miscommunication, the Kayshon Boutte deep throw. It looked like a double move.
Right.
Made it look like their bow concept, a little high-low with an in-breaker and a little arrow route underneath. Boutte said it looked like he stopped running. Also thought it was a forced throw for Maye, to be honest. I didn't like either guy there. But Boutte said after the game that he and Drake just maybe didn't see the same thing and he needed to watch the tape. So that was another one. But looking at the numbers, not great for Drake Maye. First of all, when you look at his play, bringing up the stats versus the blitz, 1 for 6 for 7 yards, 2 sacks and 2 scrambles. He did have a big-time throw, to give him some credit there. It was the throw to Jalen Polk. But he was only accurate on 46.7% of throws where he wasn't blitzed. That was his first game with a completion rate below 60% when not blitzed. And then when you look at downfield, he was 3 for 6 for 65 yards and a touchdown. Also had the drop, like I mentioned, from Jalen Polk. The disappointing part is he was 50% on underneath throws, and he had a 75% adjusted completion rate. Both of those were career lows on underneath passes in games where he had at least 10 attempts or 15 dropbacks. So A lot of not good there. When we look even closer at the numbers, he had the fewest attempts he's ever had in a game with at least 15 dropbacks. Now, when you have the ball for less than 20 minutes, that's kind of what's going to happen. Also had his highest average depth of oh my gosh, that is so tough every time. Highest average depth of throw, also the highest rate of yards that came through the air. Average depth of target was 10.1. That was the highest he's had in a single game in his career. Completion rate, obviously the lowest. That's what's going to happen when you get aggressive a lot of the time. Touchdown interception ratio was the second best of his career, 1-0. The best was 2-0 against the Jaguars. He did have a turnover-worthy play, though. That was the throw to Booty that almost got intercepted. Got sacked 4 times. That was tied for the most that he's taken in a game. Again, 2 of those were not on the offensive line. Jesus, is this off a typewriter? No, it's so the reason I use
I like the text, but go ahead.
I love it. It's the font that I use when I worked at NFL Network. This is whenever they do their stats and everything and they have their notes, this is what it looks like. So for me, it honestly just makes me feel like I'm being more professional. I
think it looks good.
I love it. I love it. It makes
Taylor
me excited.
Little inside baseball. When we were prepping for one of these shows a couple weeks ago, Taylor sent me the thing, and then I sent him something back, and I used the same format. He was like, "Oh, you like that font, huh?" I was like, "Yeah, I didn't know how you ever did it. I just thought it was like because you and Evan both do it. Obviously, both of you worked for the NFL at a time, so I thought you just I thought it was just exported data from some sort of website you guys had, but it turns out you guys make it that way. So fascinating stuff. But I saw that comment.
So Barth is on the bandwagon as well. This is
okay.
And then also he had 5 scrambles, the second most he's had in a game. So again, not the best performance from Drake Maye. Let's dive into the tape and see exactly why. Now, I want to start with the good. That 2-minute situation, that's where Drake Maye pretty consistently looks like he's at his best. He had the really nice throw to Kendrick Bourne on that bread and butter bow concept. Also had the obviously great job getting the defensive lineman to jump off sides, then just throwing a catchable ball to Demario Douglas. Great adjustment by Pop. Just fantastic play there. And then, oh my gosh, what the heck happened here? Whatever that was, he had this drop in the bucket to Jalen Polk, where the receiver was interfered with, but also probably should have caught it. Looks like he might have injured his shoulder there. Also, I really like this play where Khalil Mack drops under a slant from Kayshon Boutte. Drake Maye does a great job looking to the other side of the field and finding his outlet, despite the fact he had a rusher bearing down. Now, there were also a lot of missed opportunities from Drake Maye, and it was both due to accuracy and also some kind of shaky decision-making. Accuracy was the biggest one. So I'll hit that first. So he had a forced deep shot to Boutte, like I mentioned, on the double move. I think the receiver did pull up, but it was also thrown pretty far. I'm kind of tough. That's kind of a decision-making accuracy combo there. Also, there was a potential late throw to Boutte on an out where Hunter Henry was open over the middle, bailed out by DPI, but I thought that maybe Drake should have thrown it to take sooner. He had a high miss to Kendrick Bourne on an out. He had multiple inaccurate throws targeting Austin Hooper on out routes. Now, didn't matter the first couple of times, but there was a 4th and 6 where this happened. The route was a yard short of the sticks, and because Drake Maye didn't put it accurately, Austin Hooper couldn't get the first down, and they had to get off the field. Also felt like there were times where he just came off things a little bit too quickly. And also we had like a wide throw on a screen to Antonio Gibson, a high slant to Kayshon Boutte that he kind of got bailed out because Boutte made a really good catch. And there was a throw to Henry that was kind of weird. I remember talking about it post-game, didn't know what happened. It seemed like wasted motion where he tried to move 2 defenders, and it was just wasted motion, lets the ball go, and kind of was unsettled. Also felt like he came off some things pretty quickly. Like there was a play action opportunity where he checked down really fast. Probably could have gone for an explosive gain. There was a sack where Hunter Henry had space in the flat, but Drake kind of held onto the ball, didn't let it go. There was an RPO or a triple option where he made a late decision to pull the ball and throw. That led to an illegal man downfield penalty. You really can't have that. Hopefully he learns from that. Maybe kind of an overlap from college. Also, another quick decision I thought where he missed a bit of an opportunity. So Drake Maye, we sing his praises all the time. The past 2 weeks, I would say he's taken steps back. Last week 2 weeks ago against Buffalo, understandable, bad weather. He's not used to that kind of weather. Needs to get used to it because he's going to be playing in a lot of it if he wants to be making the playoffs in Foxborough. Right. But, in his first game, I understood. And then also last week, I know he said he wasn't concussed, but at times it was so out of character, some of the mental decisions that he made. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not a doctor. I don't want to, actually say that he was or was not. I just thought mentally he wasn't as locked in as he usually is. Like some blitzes where I thought he missed opportunities to get the ball out faster and didn't. Another reason why I do want him to get a couple series at least, or a couple quarters.
Just going to say that.
So that he can, maybe reset, especially against backups, or even if it's against starters, hopefully. Get yourself a couple good drives under your belt, finish the season on a high note, then get on the bench and protect yourself. Because it was disappointing, that effort last week. I got to say, I thought that the struggles were more on, really explicitly, I thought it was on Cole Strange and Drake Maye. I thought they were kind of the biggest culprits of why the offense had so much trouble getting things going. But, he's a young player. We know that Drake is smart, talented, not an error repeater. I don't think this is going to carry over into next season, but it also emphasizes why it's important to have stable protection and receivers that he can count on, because when he doesn't, there's a little bit of that freelancey, maybe like kind of reverting back to college stuff that we talked about being the one thing you're worried about if he starts with such a poor supporting cast.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, and that's what I was going to say as far as get him a couple reps, get him a couple drives, treating it like a preseason game. Now, look, do I think that because he played probably his worst game as a starter last week that he's going to just not revert back to his old ways, but be a shell of himself heading into next season? No, absolutely not. But there is something to finishing the season on a bit of more of a high note, having a game, like you had a couple weeks ago, even against Arizona, where they got blown up, but he played pretty good football. He put together a couple touchdown drives at the end of that game. Like, go out there, get a score in, go 7 of 9, go 8 of 10 or whatever, and have a little bit of a rhythm heading into next year. I think that just makes everybody around you feel a little bit better. And I'm starting to get with you as far as, play Joe Milton and give that guy some reps, treat this like a preseason game. But you also have to get the stench of the 40-7 loss to the Chargers off of you. And I think that I know. Well, that's the problem. He goes out there. He goes out. The plan is, let's say hypothetically, the plan is to throw Drake out there for 2 drives, and he throws 2 interceptions. It's like, well, now you got to keep him out there and make sure he goes out and throws a touchdown, or at least doesn't turn the football over. So it's an interesting dilemma. We'll see how they end up handling it, but ultimately not Drake Maye's best game last Sunday against the Chargers. All right, let's wrap up this show, Taylor, with some rapid-fire Q&A from the chat. I have a couple starred. Again, we don't have a ton of time. Probably take another 5-10 minutes to answer some of these, but we'll go quickly here. Taylor, Mayo, Vrabel, Brian Flores, Ben Johnson, or somebody else? Who do you want to be the Patriots head coach next year?
I would want to ask around. I don't know a ton of people who cover the Lions. If I could find some people who really are kind of familiar with how he is around people and players and everything, if he checks the boxes of being someone who does have a plan and is prepared for this opportunity and is very good with players and all that, and it checks out and people are confident he can be a good head coach, I'm open to it if he also brings a type of defensive head coach, like a coordinator that can just completely focus on that side of the ball and also just poach some people from Detroit. Like if you have to fire Elliott Wolf, make sure you're hiring someone from the Detroit front office. Totally. That is a situation that I said, I don't like the idea of hiring another rookie head coach because of the Gerard Mayo situation. But if you interview a bunch of people and Ben Johnson is the one you like the best, I'm much more open to the idea. So Ben Johnson, I think, is your best case scenario if everything lined up correctly. If they felt like, still maybe I'm shaky on the young guy, I probably would go with Mike Vrabel because I don't if Brian Flores, if Flores brought Josh McCown, I would consider it. But Josh McCown's also probably going to leave in a couple of years if he does well. So
that's
at least McDaniels is somebody who's going to stick around. In Mayo, I'm sorry, I'm pretty off him. There's not a whole lot that he could do right now that would make me confident. If they really add a lot around him, I won't feel as upset because I just think that he's done so much to damage the brand on top of not living up to a lot of his promises and making a lot of his own problems that I'm very worried about the idea of him continuing to be their guy.
I don't know if it would ever happen because of McDaniels' relationship with Belichick, but how would you feel about McDaniels coming in as the Patriots OC under Gerard Mayo next year?
I think that if Mayo stays and you change the offensive coordinator, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think Alex Van Pelt has been bad enough where if you keep Mayo, you fire him. I think that's fair. I would like to add maybe like I talked about the 49ers wide receivers coach as like a pass game coordinator. Sure. I would love something like that. Bring another voice into the room that's maybe more familiar with motion and window dressing and things like that to add another dimension. But I think firing Alex Van Pelt and keeping Gerard Mayo would be a huge misstep.
Yeah. My answer is Mike Vrabel here, and I'm going to add this question in there as well. Can we finally get outside of the Bill tree? Now, Vrabel's not a a Belichick tree guy as far as coaching. He coached under Bill O'Brien, which is, I guess, adjacent to it, but he's kind of his own.
Ohio State. He went to
Right.
Ohio State.
Exactly. So he was at Ohio State before. He worked under Urban Meyer for a little bit, then went to O'Brien. But he's kind of his own thing. He's not necessarily in that tree per se. But back to the question about it, I'm still Vrabel, and I understand the idea of wanting an offensive head coach. And again, you look around the league right now, and aside from Dan Campbell, the guys at the top, it's Kevin O'Connell, it's Kyle Shanahan even, who now granted they're not in the postseason, but your Sean McVays of the world, Andy Reid, Sean McDermott is a defensive guy too. But for the most part, Zach Taylor, like the good teams, the good coaches are coached by offensive guys. But the Josh McDaniels part of it makes it so interesting to me. And I sound like a broken record, but I truly believe that he is, like, you have to be able to separate Josh McDaniels, the OC, from Josh McDaniels, the head coach, and he's a really solid offensive coordinator, and now he's not a flight risk. I remember year after year with the Patriots, I would, sit up, as when I was a fan at 11, 12, 13 years old, I would sit up thinking, you can't be that good because then Josh is going to leave, and then what's Brady going to do? O'Brien's with Penn State. O'Brien's with Houston. What are they going to do? And every time his name would come up in head coaching circles, I would get a little freaked out knowing that he was going to leave. But so now it doesn't seem like he will, and I do. If I had to pick from this list, I think it's Vrabel, and that's kind of where I'm going to stick to. And now I said Vrabel last year after Bill got fired, and then I kind of succumbed to the Mayo hype, and I thought that was a good idea. It doesn't seem like it right now. Again, we'll see what happens. I still think, if I had to put money on it right now, I still think Gerard Mayo is the head coach next year. But it's starting to lean in that direction. So, all right. Thoughts on having a true GM? Now, I didn't really get this question, but I wanted to at least bring it up to kind of talk about the GM in general. Thoughts about having a true GM position? Any executive that eventually comes here and serves as executive vice president will be able to interview for outside GM jobs since it's a promotion. So, now I don't know the rules on this. I do know that each team is required to anoint a head coach and then anoint a head of personnel. And that is Elliot Wolf right now. Even though he doesn't have the general manager title, he is the de facto GM. He's probably getting paid like one. I don't think that a guy like Wolf or another guy in here, if you could bring him in as the EVP, I don't necessarily think that they
I don't think it's truly a promotion in anything
right,
other,
that's what I'm saying.
Same duties, yeah.
But also, Taylor, they kind of skirted around the general manager cycle as well with Elliot Wolf by not naming him general manager, because in theory, with Belichick leaving, I'm pretty sure they had to bring in outside candidates for this job, and I don't think they did. They just made Wolf the EVP, not the GM, and that's how they got away with not bringing in external candidates. So they really wanted to keep this thing internal with Wolf, with Mayo. So it's kind of on them now at this point on there. But I wanted to ask that and throw that out there because there's also this question. Would you rather replace Wolf or Mayo, or which makes a bigger difference in your opinion?
Mayo by far.
Yeah.
I don't think Wolf has publicly embarrassed the team. And I know everyone wants to crucify. I already went on Twitter and talked about how I don't think that anything he didn't do regarding the offensive line is fireable. The only moves that you could argue, the only mistakes I think he made were maybe not signing Jonah Williams, which Jonah Williams also missed a ton of games because he has a serious injury history, had a knee injury, had another knee injury, also was still playing right tackle.
Right.
Maybe he could have played left for you, and obviously Chooks was a similar situation, but I don't think Jonah Williams is such a difference maker that this offensive line looks completely better. And Elliot Wolf had some, gross negligence. And then you could say, yeah, he missed the wave of tackles in the second round. Maybe he could have traded up. I also think that they didn't want a young guy, right or wrong. I don't agree with everything they did. I think they should learn from, maybe reaching on Polk because they wanted to fill a role.
Sure.
Maybe not trading up and saying, yeah, this guy may be young, even if we take him. But I think they wanted a guy who they thought could start year one. Caden Wallace had a huge jump his last year. Most scouting reports thought that he was somebody who could continue that ascent and maybe start pretty early on in his career. So I think that's why they did that. But still, you can see why they did certain things. It's not like with Mayo, where there's so many things that are completely inexplicable. It's just I don't know. And also, at least Elliot Wolf has done things right. Drake May, picking him. People say it was a shoo-in. It wasn't. Media didn't have a consensus on what they should do. Fans didn't have a consensus on what they should do. And former players have said that Bill Belichick would have traded the pick. And we know he doesn't like Drake May that much. So, no, It wasn't really a slam dunk because there were other things you could have done. So he gets credit for that. He gets credit for filling out the coaching staff. Most of them are his connections. Got Alex Van Pelt, got DC McCartney. Most of the guys he's added have been net positives for this coaching staff. And obviously, Drake Maye's development has a lot to do with Van Pelt, with McCartney. Then the third rounder for Judon, signing Hooper and Antonio Gibson. You can say what you want about Trey Jacobs, Ben Brown. They've started games for you, and there's been weeks where they've been pretty quiet. That's as much as you can possibly ask for two guys that weren't on active rosters when you signed them. And I know people want to just throw that under the rug. It's not nothing, because you could have had literal turnstiles. It could be so much worse. And also, Jaquelin Roy was one of the most productive defensive tackles in the league when he was healthy. Has Elliott Wolf made mistakes? Absolutely. I still think there wasn't a whole lot of difference-making talent in free agency. Yes, I think you can argue he reached in the draft. Those are things you can learn from. And also, he's been aggressive in trying to add receiver help. You cannot say he has not tried to add weapons.
Totally.
Only thing he did was basically not just get fleeced. Now, you got the money. Hopefully, Mayo hasn't embarrassed you to the point that no one wants to come here. But yeah, I think it's insane. If they clean house and Wolf is kind of a victim of that, that's one thing. It's
totally.
But if you're going to keep Mayo and you fire Wolf, that's insane. And I will be very, very disappointed. I'm not saying Wolf is the guy. He hasn't proven that yet. I think this is the offseason where you start to show, hey, I can make shrewd moves. I will bring in the right pieces and be serious about addressing the offense. Like, this is that offseason. And I understand not wanting to have all this capital, all these picks, all this money, and waste it on a guy who might not be here. But again, if Mayo's saying you cannot get rid of Elliott Wolf, I don't even think he'd want you or agree with getting rid of Elliott Wolf, who has more experience in leading roles than does Mayo. So, yeah, I understand people being frustrated with Wolf. I think ask him to be fired, which does not happen with GMs, by the way. Can you remember the last GM who got fired after a year?
No.
If you want to talk about firing a head coach after 1 year looking bad, that's a terrible look, because there's not even really much precedent for it, unless an organization just cleaned house, which, again, I don't know that happens ever after a year. So, yeah, it's Mayo, and I really don't think it's close, because Wolf has not embarrassed your entire organization.
I think the way you pointed,
a couple bad comments during the draft. I'm sorry. I think he did have a couple of things where he was talking about how, like, they weren't going to be hard asses.
Yeah,
he make his mistakes, but he hasn't made any in recent history, at least. And
because he's not required to talk to us every week.
Right. And again,
but I get what you're saying.
Draft, I think, is starting to look better as the season goes on. So, at least Wolf, you can say things he's done well. You can't really do that for draft Mayo.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that the way you put it is perfect, where it'd be one thing if he is a victim of a clean house. Like, that's a so be it type of thing, where if you're going to bring in a new head coach that wants to work with somebody else, if Mike Vrabel has a handpicked guy and they really want to go that route, okay, so be it. Get rid of Wolf, number one pick. You have a lot of opportunity to bring in someone with more experience. But if it's one or the other and they chose Wolf over Mayo, that's crazy talk. All right, let's wrap it up with this.
I got a question. One thing since Wolf done well. Rewind the show.
There you go. Okay, Taylor, what do you... No, all right, but... Sorry, I had to do that.
Through the screen.
Yeah, literally. Okay, final question before we wrap this thing up. Any interest in bringing in Cooper Kupp this offseason as a potential veteran wide receiver? Gives May a short-term weapon, and maybe he can help with Polk's development so it's not a wasted pick.
He's not a free agent.
I don't know if he's a free agent. You might have to trade for him, honestly, and I think he's paid pretty well.
Yeah, no, he's going to be signed. If the Rams cut him next year, they'd have $22.3 million in dead money, 7.5 in savings. They could cut him in 2026. But yeah.
So would you trade for the contract? Would you trade for Cooper Kupp?
For like a fourth, maybe. But like, he's older. He's got injuries. I love him as a player, but draft somebody. I think that'd be a waste of resources.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, actually, I do want to wrap it up on this one really quick. Is Sam Darnold, and I think this was an answer to something, but I saw a question mark, so I threw it in our little Q&A here. But I think it's an interesting topic to wrap up on the Drake Maye situation, because Sam Darnold was a bust. He was not good in New York. He was not good in Carolina. He was a backup last year under Kyle Shanahan, and I think that's where he started to take a turn, because he didn't have great offensive coaching in New York. Matt Rule in Carolina was a nightmare. But then he started to, turn heel a little bit in San Fran, learning under Shanahan. And now he's with Kevin O'Connell, and he is a stud. Now, is he an elite quarterback, as the question asks? No. But I think as we look for the next head coach, the next OC, it's important to have an offensive guru in your ear. Now, some guys don't need it, but like I look at Josh Allen, where he's had them in the past, but he's had a turnstile of offensive coordinators and quarterbacks coach, and he just kind of makes it happen. But even Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid is an offensive guru, and he is part of the reason why Mahomes has become one of the greatest quarterbacks of all times.
Major reason.
Exactly.
The whole thing was like Andy Reid had a rule where it was for the first 2.5 seconds, the play is mine. After that,
yes,
go nuts.
Right. And so the Darnold aspect of what he's done and how he's turned this around, I think is important to look at with Drake Maye, and just how important it is finding that next head coach if they do move on from Mayo, or finding that next OC, or understanding that his relationship with Alex Van Pelt that he cherishes right now and thinks that he's done a good job. That's important enough to potentially keep him if Maye is actually that on board and you've seen enough growth from him this season where you trust AVP.
Yeah. Wait. So are we?
That's kind of my thought on it, and also your thoughts on Sam Darnold and just the Kevin O'Connell situation in general.
Kevin O'Connell's awesome.
Yeah, he is.
Oh my God, I really, really wish.
That's why Ben Johnson's intriguing. He's kind of like that type of guy who, he seems like a leader, but he's also a guru. And I know we don't know enough about Ben Johnson, but I don't know. I think Kevin O'Connell's a freaking stud, former Patriots quarterback as well. So I love what he's done with Darnold.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Kevin O'Connell. It's not funny. It's sad how many busted quarterbacks the Jets, Panthers, and Browns are responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
Or just ruining for some period of time where these guys, obviously Bryce Young is doing it in his second season, but you got Baker, Darnold, all these guys who are on those teams, and now we're places with stable coaching, with some talent, and they're having complete career revivals. Like Geno Smith, obviously.
Right.
It's awesome to watch for those guys because they've been through it, but just insane that those three teams are responsible for almost ruining so many careers.
It is crazy.
Is Darnold elite? I think he's playing along that caliber. Yeah, I don't know if he's there yet. He always had the talent. I'd like to see if he can do this consistently. Also going to be very interesting to see what happens with him and JJ McCarthy, because I don't think you just this offseason immediately trade JJ. I think that's kind of crazy. I think you at least wait a year because you want to see what Darnold's got. God forbid something happens to Darnold. Maybe you have to switch. I think it's wild when you have two very good quarterbacks, but also neither one has necessarily proven themselves consistently, to just ship one. I think that's a really risky move. So I would try to keep Darnold. I would hold on to
franchise him
season. Yep, exactly. And then just see what happens. And if Sam Darnold has another great season, then maybe you think about moving McCarthy. But Vikings are in a very good spot. Good for them.
Very good spot. KOC's a stud. Hopefully
7-2.
Yeah,
he's
I know.
So young because he came out when he was 21.
Was he 21? I think out of USC. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy situation. So hopefully the Patriots can get Drake Maye, their Kevin O'Connell one day, or pair him up with Gerard Mayo if they do decide to go that route. Either way, Patriots head into Week 18 at 3-13 after falling to the Chargers 40-7. That's going to do it for us here on Patriots Daily. We'll be back later in the week to answer some more of your questions. We'll probably do another mailbag. We'll definitely preview Patriots versus Bills coming up as well. So make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Like this video. Read all of Taylor's written work on CLNSmedia.com. Follow him on Twitter at TKyles39. If you want to follow me, you can follow me at Mike Kadlick on Twitter as well. And until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you soon. Peace out, everyone.